Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, it's funny. We humans seem hardwired for order, for rules. We build systems everywhere.
We do. Governments, companies.
Even families, right. But what about organizations that live completely outside the law? I mean, groups that literally cannot use contracts, courts, police.
Yeah, how do they function?
Exactly. It sounds like total chaos. But somehow, many of them don't just function, they actually thrive. For decades, even centuries.
It's a real paradox.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving into the surprisingly structured world of criminal codes within mafia organizations. Our deep dive today is really sparked by this fascinating article by Maritzio Catino called Mafia Rules, the role of criminal codes in mafia organizations.
A very insightful piece.
It is, and our mission really is to understand how these outlaw groups build their own pretty robust systems of governance, how they create order where you'd least expect it.
It's such a core challenge for them, isn't it? Because think about it, legitimate businesses swim in this sea of legal infrastructure.
Right, courts, contracts.
All of that. Regulatory bodies. But for criminal outfits, none of that exists.
Nothing.
So without any external way to sort out disputes or enforce agreements, what's left?
Internal rules.
Exactly. Internal organizational rules become absolutely critical, existential even. It's the only way they can manage interactions between people who are, let's be honest, often inherently dishonest and definitely can't call 911 if things go wrong.
So internal rules are basically their lifeline.
Pretty much. It's a high-stakes game. Internal chaos isn't just messy, it could mean prison or worse, total collapse.
That really frames the problem they face. No external law to rely on. How do they manage cooperation, achieve economic goals? They're basically operating in a state of anarchy compared to the outside world.
Yeah, anarchy relative to external law. It forces them onto their own path, this kind of law of the outlaws.
Which leads to what?
Well, scholars call it private governance. It's self-regulation born from necessity, from the need to survive.
And the article looks at specific examples.
It does. Two very well-known, very structured ones. The Sicilian Kosanostra.
Okay.
And the American La Cosa Nostra. And these aren't just, loose gangs. They're highly evolved organizations.
And what makes Catino's work so powerful here is the sheer range of sources he uses. It's not just one thing.
No, it's incredibly comprehensive.
He's got written codes, actual mafia rulebooks, then testimony from informants, people who lived it.
Right, insiders.
Major court investigations, biographies of ex-members, stuff from police stings, plus academic and historical research.
That depth is what gives the findings real weight. It unlocks how these groups actually work behind the stereotypes.
So when we talk about organizational rules here, what exactly does that mean in this context? How is it different from just like social norms?
That's a great question. Here, organizational rules are the explicit or sometimes implicit norms, regulations, expectations that the organization itself sets up.
Okay, so they're deliberate.
Yes, very deliberate, with a purpose aimed at members, and crucially, often backed by the organization's own enforcement, usually centralized and pretty severe punishment systems.
So not like unspoken social rules that just kind of emerge?
Exactly. These are stipulated, they're strategic, they're enforced, much more binding than just, how people generally expect you to behave.
Okay, so moving past the how do they even exist paradox, the paper identifies three main jobs these rules do. Three pillars for their self-governance. And it's not just random control, right? These functions seem vital for their survival. Let's get into the first one. How do rules help with basic organization and cooperation?
Well, this first function is fundamental for any group trying to achieve something together, criminal or not. It's simply to ensure organization, coordination, and cooperation among members.
Like any company needs structure.
Precisely. Mafias need structure too. Rules create that organizational order. They define roles, who does what, and critically, they clarify the chain of command.
Who's the boss, who reports to who?
Exactly. That regulates all sorts of things, like how money flows, but also basic behavior, like showing respect to superiors. It keeps the internal machine running.
And the source mentions it's not just within one family, but also between different mafia groups, coordinating those relationships.
Oh, absolutely vital. Think about the big operations, drug trafficking maybe, or large-scale extortion. These often cross territories, involve multiple families or crews.
Right.
Without clear rules on how these separate groups interact, you'd have constant conflict, turf wars, betrayals. It would wreck the whole enterprise.
So the rules act like treaties almost.
In a way, yeah. A kind of criminal diplomacy. They set boundaries, protocols for interaction, because there's no UN or world court for them to appeal to.
Makes sense. Okay, the second function feels much more specific to criminal groups, to settle conflicts and contain violence. How do rules actually stop things from blowing up when there's no legal system?
This one is perhaps the most distinctive and honestly crucial for them staying in business. In a normal company, a big fight might end up in court, maybe arbitration.
Or someone gets fired.
Right. Mafias don't have those options. If every single argument, every internal rivalry could just escalate into violence.
You'd destroy themselves.
Exactly. They'd tear themselves apart from the inside, become easy pickings for rivals or the police. So the rules provide clear procedures for handling disputes. Who mediates, what kind of evidence is allowed, what the punishments are. It preserves the group by stopping this internal bloodletting, this self-destruction.
And the specific examples in the paper are really striking. Things like, it is forbidden to touch the women of other mobs.
Yes, very specific boundaries.
Or the explicit rule that mobs should never resort to violence with other mobs. That's not a suggestion.
Definitely not. These are almost like constitutional limits for them. They create these hard lines to keep the peace internally, prevent endless costly vendettas.
Wow. Okay. And the third function. This one seems obvious, but maybe more complex than it looks, to maintain secrecy and conceal information.
Obvious, yes, but absolutely existential for any illegal group. This is their shield against law enforcement.
If they leak info, they're done.
Pretty much. Members get arrested, operations get shut down, the whole organization is threatened. Now, compare that to a legal business.
They need secrecy sometimes, like for patents or R&D.
Exactly. Limited secrecy for specific things. For the mafia, secrecy is the default setting. It has to cover everything, permeate every single activity.
And the rules for enforcing that are so practical, almost mundane sometimes.
They have to be.
The source mentions things like how members have to introduce themselves to members of other families in a very specific way.
Right, a coded introduction.
That they should never ask for someone's last name.
Minimizes traceable information.
And even rules like don't use the telephone for anything important.
Yeah, because phones can be tapped. These aren't just grand principles, they're day-to-day operational security procedures. Baked into the rules to keep that veil of secrecy intact.
It really shifts your perspective. It's easy to just think violent thugs, but this research forces you to see them as these complex, surprisingly resilient organizations.
Absolutely.
And it makes you wonder why they get overlooked sometimes in, like, mainstream organizational studies.
It's a definite gap, and they have a huge socioeconomic footprint, which makes them worthy of study just from that angle.
Like how big?
Well, consider the Italian mafias. Estimates put their turnover from illegal stuff somewhere between 8 and 13 billion euros a year.
Billion, wow.
Yeah, that's like 0.6 to nearly 0.9% of Italy's entire GDP. And that's before you even count the money they make from the legitimate businesses they infiltrate or control.
That's staggering.
Or look at the American Kosanostra. Back in '99, Jacobs called it the largest, most sophisticated, most powerful, and most remarkable crime syndicate in the history of the United States.
High praise in a dark way.
It reflects their reach. Drugs, gambling, loan sharking, controlling unions, but also legitimate fronts in things like waste management, construction.
They're diversified.
Highly. But let's not forget the violence underpinning it. The Italian Cosa Nostra alone, responsible for almost 2,000 murders just between 1983 and 2012.
That combination of organization, economic power, and brutality is something else.
It is.
But maybe the most mind-bending thing is how long they last. Their resilience. You mentioned the Sicilian Cosa Nostra roots back to the mid-1800s.
That's right.
And the American one, early 20th century. They operate in what the paper calls extremely hostile environments, constant pressure from law enforcement.
Intense pressure. Massive prosecutions.
Yet they're described as among the most long-lasting and resilient organizations ever known. How? What does that resilience tell us?
It tells us they're doing something right, organizationally speaking. They're not just chaotic. And that's where Catino's work is so valuable academically.
By applying standard organizational theory.
Exactly. Applying those frameworks to mafias fills this gap and shows, look, even though they're outlaw groups, they absolutely follow a kind of organizational rationality.
Their structure isn't random.
Not at all. Their longevity isn't luck. It's a direct result of these carefully constructed, if brutal, internal systems. The rules work.
So, okay, boiling it down, what does this all mean? These mafia rules, they aren't just arbitrary commands, they're a rational response.
A deeply rational, calculated response. They're designed to regulate behavior, force self-control on members, create these obligations to prevent problems before they happen.
And ultimately just establish some kind of predictable social order within their own world.
Exactly. And they need that rationality because the problems they face are immense, far beyond what most legal businesses deal with.
Like what kinds of problems specifically?
Well, first, just operating in that hostile environment where one mistake, one leak can be catastrophic.
Constant danger.
Constant. Then there are huge issues with information, communication, and just basic trust between members. Who can you rely on?
Right.
Transaction costs are incredibly high. Finding good, reliable members is tough, what economists call adverse selection. The people most eager to join might be the least trustworthy or competent.
That's a tricky hiring problem.
Definitely. Plus, they can't keep detailed records, obviously. They have to stay relatively small. Keep tight control to stop police getting in.
No HR department, no legal team.
None of that. No external courts for disputes.
Yeah.
And they constantly have to worry about internal power struggles, coups, takeovers. It's a minefield.
So how does that shape their solutions compared to a legal company? A normal business could just sue someone or outsource a function.
Mafias can't do that. They have to prioritize secrecy and internal fixes above almost all else.
Everything gets handled in-house.
It has to be. Every problem, trust, coordination, conflict needs an internal solution, usually backed by that threat of swift, severe punishment. That necessity dictates the rules, the structure, everything.
And the paper breaks down which rules apply where, right? Like some functions are universal.
Yeah, it clarifies the scope. Basic organizational functions, coordination, roles, that's universal. Any organization needs that.
Legal or illegal.
Right. Secrecy. That's key for any secret society, legal or not. Think fraternities, intelligence agencies.
Okay.
But containing internal conflict without relying on outside help. That's the specific critical challenge for criminal organizations that operate outside the law. They have no third party to turn to.
That typology makes a lot of sense.
That it does.
So wrapping this up, what this deep dive really hammers home is, well, something pretty profound, I think. Even with zero support from the law, these incredibly complex, resilient groups like mafias manage to build sophisticated internal rule systems. And these rules aren't just about fear, they're fundamental to their survival, their function in these incredibly tough environments.
And what's so fascinating, really, is what this tells us more broadly. Understanding the organizational logic, the rationality behind these rules, even in illegal groups, it gives you this powerful insight into a basic human thing.
Which is?
The need for structure, for cooperation, for governance. It shows up anywhere a group is trying to achieve shared goals, no matter how dangerous or illicit those goals might be. It's about human organization adapting.
That's a really powerful takeaway. And it leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. If these intricate, effective rule systems can emerge and persist in the most hostile, lawless environments imaginable, what does that suggest about the role of rules? The written and unwritten ones in the survival and success of any group you're part of.
Think about your own workplace, maybe a team you're on, even a club.
What are the hidden codes, the explicit guidelines that hold it together, and why are they so crucial, maybe more crucial than you realize, for that group to actually function and endure? Something to ponder until our next deep dive.